Megan with Call Dad, and I am the Director of Training here. Today we're going to be talking to you about how to add refrigerant to a system. Now, we have already gone through a video showing how to connect your gauges and also use superheat and subcooling to check the refrigerant charge. If you're interested in watching either of those videos, they'll be in the description below. So our gauges are already hooked up. We've also got our temperature clamp on our liquid line. So because this system has a TXV as the indoor metering device, we know that our subcooling needs to be 10 degrees. And right now, looking at our high side saturation temperature, we're right about 85, 86. But we only have 82 as our line temperature. So we're looking at about a 3 to 4 temperature difference, and we want that to be closer to 10. So I'm gonna show you guys how to add refrigerant accurately in those situations. First things first, make sure that you have a refrigerant scale. The EPA does mandate that you track all refrigerant you're adding or removing from a system. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn that on. So I'm going to disconnect my yellow hose here. You can remove the cap and place it on the back, just like you would for the refrigerant line caps. And I don't need to worry about how I'm attaching my hose here. There's no refrigerant that's going to leak out because I have not opened it yet. So you can be a little bit more casual with this than you would when you're attaching your hoses to the system. Okay. Well, once I've got that on secure and I've double checked, make sure all my other connections are tight, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open this tank up. You can go one, maybe 1.5 turns. You do not have to crank it wide open. There will be refrigerant in this line already. And then before I start adding it to my system, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put it on my scale and zero my scale out. But it is important to note that depending on what type of refrigerant you have, the orientation of the tank on the scale does matter. So 410A and R454B, which is the refrigerant we're moving to for some brands, are a blend. And so when we have a blended refrigerant, we want to make sure that we are adding it as a liquid, meaning our tank needs to be upside down on the scale. R22, R32, those are single compounds. And so you would actually add those to the system with the tank upright as a vapor. It's slower, but we are going to be adding our refrigerant in through our suction line, and the suction line directly connects to our compressor. So we prefer to add vapor, but if we do have to add it in liquid form like this, you're gonna notice we're only gonna be adding small amounts at a time so that we don't go ahead and damage that compressor by flooding it with liquid. So right now, okay, my scale is showing a weight. It is pretty sensitive, so you'll notice if I move this tank around or if I move these hoses around, that number is going to adjust. So I wanna make sure everything's still nice and flat. If you're outside, make sure it's a nice even surface that you've got your scale on. And I'm gonna hold down the 0 button to zero that out. And now, from here on out, I'll know how much refrigerant I've added in. My recommendation is adding between 4 to 6 ounces of refrigerant at a time. Some people get impatient and add a little bit more than that, especially with experience. But especially when you're starting out and getting used to adding refrigerant to a system, make sure you're adding these very small quantities, again, to protect the compressor, but also that you're not accidentally overcharging the system with refrigerant, because then you're gonna have to undo all that work, take it back out. So now that I've got my scale zeroed out, I'm gonna be monitoring my subcooling primarily. We will check superheat again at the end, but right now, again, my subcooling is around the 3 to 4 degrees. Okay. So I'm gonna start by adding 6 ounces of refrigerant because I know I'm probably gonna need a good bit more than that. Once we've got this on our scale, it's important. There was air in our yellow hose prior, so we wanna make sure that we burp, okay, or some people say purge. Just let a little bit of refrigerant out so that way we know we've gotten all of the air out of the line and we're not going to be adding any air into the system which can create acid inside and can corrode our windings and cause other problems. Once I've burped that system or the manifold here to my system, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the blue side. This is our suction line, so we are going to suck the refrigerant from our tank into our system. And we do this on the low side because one of the refrigeration laws is knowing that pressure only ever goes from a high pressure to a low pressure. We cannot force refrigerant to go somewhere where the pressure is already higher. So this tank right now is pressurized more than the low side of our system. So when I open this up, I'm just gonna crack this blue side of my manifold. You can see that refrigerant is going in. And right there, I was a little over 4 ounces. I'm gonna add a couple more till we get to 6. So there I'm at 6.2 ounces. And here we wait. We sit, we let the system recycle, pump that refrigerant through before then we'll reassess our subcooling, and we'll repeat this process over and over again. It's slow, but we don't want to rush it because again, this refrigerant may have to cycle, 2 stories up and 25 feet across to an attic space. Here in our lab setting, our indoor unit is very close, so it won't take quite as long, but out in the field, don't rush. Give it time for that system to balance and adjust, okay? So I haven't noticed much change here. It looks like I'm maybe more 87 in terms of my saturation temperature. My line temperature is still 82, so I want to continue adding until I get closer to that 10 target subcooling for my system. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another 6 ounces in, watching my scale carefully. So I added just under 6 ounces. I'm now at 11.4 ounces. Okay. Again, I'm going to give it some time to sit, watch as it balances and adjusts. All right, so we've gone ahead and we've added our refrigerant in at incremental amounts. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to recheck my subcooling and also my superheat just to confirm that we're in the target range for our system. So right now my high side saturation temperature is right about 89, 90 degrees. And my line temperature is right about 78 degrees. So we're looking at about 11, maybe 12 degrees of subcooling. I'd rather it be slightly higher than a little under, because every time a technician hooks up their gauges, we are gonna lose a small amount of refrigerant in that process. But at this time, I'm satisfied with our subcooling. Now we need to check our superheat, and so I'm going to move my temp clamp back over to my suction line. Give that a moment to adjust. So here my sat temp is still about 35 degrees and my line temp is about 45 degrees. So we're still right around 10. And that's good because we have that indoor TXV. Its job is to modulate open and close to help keep that number right at about 10 to 15. So it's doing its job. So that is how you add refrigerant. Lastly, before you go ahead and are finished, we want to make sure that we have documented what our scale says is the amount that we added. And then we also want to go ahead and we want to close our refrigerant tank before we remove our gauges. Don't forget that step, that's very important. So thank you all for watching and we'll catch you in the next video.